Happy Wednesdays, happy hump day to all of you. I trust you are having a productive week. Welcome back to another episode, an information-packed episode on Ready, Set, Real Estate. There's a lot happening out here, and I wanted to do a topic. I saw this comment here in the headlines, and I was like, whoa, we need to talk about this because, you know, more people need to realize this thing called NIMBY. NIMBY, not in my backyard. So I want to talk about NIMBY and really what that means and to whom does that affect, right? So for some of you, let me bring it down here. Editing, changing my shell script. There we go. There we go. All right. Episode 150, not in my backyard. If you've never heard of this term called NIMBY, and it's a group of people, it's a philosophy, theory, idea of it's okay for those people to move. You know, they can have their housing, but not in my backyard, not where I live. And so Dave Chappelle was getting some pushback on his, him showing up at the council meeting when he jumped in and said he was not in support of affordable housing, right? So, but before I do that, let's do announcements. Let's recap of what we talked about last week. So last episode, we talked about down payment, I keep saying down payment. It's closing cost grant assistance. So of course, if you work with a California, or not even a California, but if you work with a realtor, there is the Housing Affordability Fund that will give you access to $10,000, and that program launched in this month. And that program launched where for those who are in underserved, underrepresented communities, you have access to closing costs grant. So it's a true grant of $10,000. Wanted to recap, go back and check out the show for more details and information of where you can get the money. And of course, if you are on our live, say hi, say hello, drop a comment down below. Press 1 lets me know you're here. Press 2 lets me know you shared it. And of course, if you need to get in touch with me, you can always text me at 323-488-3265. I'm reminded when I say that out loud to just definitely shout out our radio podcast listeners, those who are tuning in on Spotify, iTunes, Anchor, Stitcher, Google, etc., etc. We are available on all platforms everywhere. I'm feeling so stoked and so pumped because first quarter's looking good, y'all. Have you put down those goals? Again, what are your real estate goals? Write down those real estate goals. Write down the goals. I had a client yesterday, a seller client I'm working with, and it's one of the things that I shared with her, how I'm just so impressed. And I feel like if she was so, she was open, I wonder if she'd be open to coming on the show, because she is 84 years old, a ball of wisdom, and just the thought process, everything she embodies in terms of legacy building and planning, and it's just this planning ahead is what has me so enamored with her. I'm so impressed with her because these are usually difficult conversations to have when we deal with our senior and matured clientele, right? About downsizing and cohabitating and giving up your driver's license. So I'm going on a tangent here, but I'm just letting you know where my spirit is. My spirit is fulfilled. Additionally, I just prepped another listing that's going to come to the market, and it's in South Los Angeles. It's about over 9,000 square feet. And I know that property is going to move very quickly because everyone is looking for land to develop on. And so what really hits home for me in this particular property is that it's a probate sale, which means essentially my client is deceased. So I'm dealing with the estate and the family who are the co-administrators or / administrators of that estate. And as I continue to notice, my clientele base and where the phone calls are coming from, and it's usually those probate and trust sales, and it really is something for me to pay homage, reverence, and honor that person who's now transitioned to give their property that last hoorah and prep it and just do a dynamic job in providing superior service and taking care of the family, educating them while our team is involved, and of course just helping them with that transition, because it's one thing to lose a loved one, it's a whole nother ball game to have to manage their after death affairs. Yeah, there's still the death tax return, there's still closing out creditor accounts, paying off those debts, going through their stuff, right? And that's a very different, very challenging thing to go through. So again, my spirit is filled. It's got me really pumped and excited, because that is, I feel I'm like in alignment. I'm in this alignment here, right? I'm in my purpose with this, is how I'm feeling about it. I'm in my purpose. Yes. That's how I'm feeling. All right, so do remember, we do offer monthly classes. So every month we're learning something, teaching something, and I'm really stoked about how things have kicked off this year, or really last quarter. So we've been doing really great on staying on task and on hand, learning lots of stuff. So we'll talk about 1031 exchanges, we'll talk about DSTs, we'll talk about of course, dealing with the multifamily, if you are investing or you have multifamily property, because if you're in California, Cali is showing us more and more how pro-tenant they are. In fact, tenants have protections until February 7th, 2024. February 7th, 2024 is essentially when they can make payment arrangements to pay any past due rent. So you cannot evict a tenant, and of course check with your local county and city laws and ordinances regarding that, because it's a very slippery slope here, and I have to do that, right? It's like, I don't want to touch it, I don't want to deal with it, but I have to, because as the expert, as a professional, I have to show up when my clients need us to show up. And right now, I know our mom and pop homeowners and landlords are feeling extremely overwhelmed with feeling like they are stuck. And some people are getting the money that was allocated for the back rents. It's just getting people to sign up, apply, do they qualify, are they eligible, that whole thing. So that's still in motion, but as I'm having this discussion, I'm just throwing out updates, just kind of sharing with you what I've been into, and I'm in that space of gratitude. I've got an attitude of gratitude, and I'm going to stick with it. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. So I want to do a screen share for today as we talk about this segment here. And why is that? Because your boy, and I know my husband's gonna be like, I didn't know you were gonna talk about, I don't got Lynn on I can see it in the camera. He's gonna be like, I didn't know you were gonna talk about Dave Chappelle. No one's off limits. What do you mean? No one is off limits. Let's see, dismiss that. I'm changing my screen view. Wonderful, so we can share. This is so, oh, they put an extra camera in here. I'm impressed. So yeah, let's see here. So one of the things, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. We've got to talk about it, because there's this thing, it's called NIMBY, right? So not in my backyard, meaning those people, and it's essentially this, I would say it's an overt kind of, it's an overt racism type thing, prejudice really, in keeping people, and usually it's attached with prejudices revolving around low income housing. And low income housing is all walks of life and all peoples, all backgrounds. It's not just exclusive to one ethnic group or someone of a specific background. Low income has to do with the classism, right? So class of group. And one of the things that I noticed is, as I was reading this headline, is that Dave Chappelle was at the council meeting. So there are a couple of things that we can learn from him about this, this council meeting that he's attended. Number one, attend the meetings so you know what's happening in your community, especially when we see things like trains running through the community, right? And we see more buildings and developments happening. One of the things people don't realize is that you have a voice. You have a voice. You live in the community. You shop, work, play in the community. Show up at the meetings. Show up at the council meetings, because that's an opportunity for you to express whether you agree with something, disagree, or say, you know what, what's the benefit to the community? There's one thing in holding the politicians or councilmen, people, and holding our developers accountable, right? There's the morality of it, the ethics and the integrity of the work that they do and set forth in improving the land around us. But there's also that thing in your responsibility, our responsibility, to come forth and voice, hey, this is not really going to be to our benefit. Who is this benefiting? And so that's why I'm having this discussion, is because I'm hearing this word affordable housing thrown out a lot. And it's one of those things where I'm kind of like, I don't know if our definition of affordable housing is the same as what our politicians deem. And I've got to shout out Mark Alston, and he's a broker, and he is a veteran in the real estate game, and has spoken at various organizations and board, and held various past president positions and advisory positions, etc. And one of the things that he shared, there was a board meeting that our local real estate board was having, and he was speaking on in the context of Black History Month. And one of the things he pointed out was, and I said this to myself, so note to self, invite Mark on the show to have this discussion with us. He said something very key, and he said, affordable housing is not defined the same as we see it, or, as we're chanting and we're demanding almost, right, for the community of colors to have affordable housing. The politicians who set forth budgets and decide where money is going to be allocated, in fact, what's happening is their definition of affordable housing is more so affordable rental housing. So there's more, in terms of the pot of money that's being allocated, there's more money being allocated to incentivize developers to build more affordable housing units, so rents, not affordable housing in ownership interests, in terms of equity, having affordable housing, for our communities and people of color, underserved, underrepresented. Their definition is, their mindset, if you will, is, okay, we're giving you affordable housing and we're putting a roof over your head. There it is, affordable housing. And so we've got to take it one step further and really be clear of what does that mean, affordable housing. I just put a property under contract here in the Chesterfield Square, so it's adjacent, Inglewood and LA, South LA. And it's so funny because South LA is like the new luxury market. I mean, this is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath that is going to be sold for over $600,000. And, we're talking about this growing demand for housing, this shortage of housing units. And here with that demand, you see there are more people in terms of communities of color and that diversity and underrepresented that have access to purchasing something within these pockets and these particular areas because of the demand and the shortage of inventory or housing units and pricing. So it'll be interesting to see how this year continues to pan out as the interest rates tick up. Officially, one of my lender partners told me the rates are now have a 4 in front of it. So that's where we are. With that being said, let's go ahead and take a quick sponsor break. And I want to make sure we shout out our sponsor. So today's show is sponsored by Real Estate 100, the Teen and Millennial Investment Blueprint, co-authored by Anthony Lee and myself, and we're award-winning authors, and this book is definitely a game changer for our younger community. So definitely, if you haven't had a chance to grab a copy, do so now. That's actually part of a series. So we are, I would say, past due, overdue, but right on time with releasing our next series. We will be releasing Real Estate 100, the Teen and Millennial Land Developer. So we'll be talking and touching on the basics and almost an intro style to land development. And remember that book is actually part 2 to the part 1, which is Real Estate 100, the Teen Home Buying Experience. I've been noticing that that people are ready for this information, and I say this because when I authored the book 2015 and released it, it was a great idea, but people were not ready. It was way progressive, right? This whole concept of teaching children real estate and these concepts. But kudos to those of you who have connected with me, who have supported the movement and continue to support what we're doing, because we're still doing real estate literacy for our youth communities, our young adult communities. Kudos to all of you who have been continually supporting us in that effort. And I cannot say enough how much I am grateful and thankful for you, because when we do the classes and the boot camps with the youth, I mean, they love it. They're like, their response and feedback is off the chain, and I'm really happy about that because when we first started, the people were like, kids are too young to learn this information, they're not ready, but we have continually proven them wrong. All right. So with that being said, I want to just give some final remarks here on this NIMBY. I would recommend, in terms of reading, I'm all about reading. Check out The Color of Law, the Forgotten History of how America segregated, how our government segregated America. So just key in The Color of Law, and I have my signed copy by the author. Great book, challenging read, and when I say challenging, emotionally challenging, because it's discouraging to see that in this time frame that where we experience disparities and socioeconomic disparities, of course, injustices within our communities, of areas being redlined, and now that's now changing, right? So we had pockets decades ago where people were steered into. And here we are in 2022, but just last year there was a report that showed that, real estate professionals are still steering, still being biased, still prejudiced and racist. And so that continues to create this disparity and widen the gap between people of color and their counterparts in terms of home ownership and building wealth. This is why I wanted to touch on the not in my backyard, because, some people don't realize they have these implied biases in terms of saying, I'm all for equal, justice and equality. But when you start talking about building something of affordable housing in your community, in your neighborhood, then that's when you see, I guess, the real colors come out, right? The real challenges, if you will, and the pushback that people give and say, this is not a good fit. That's what we were hearing from Dave Chappelle. He says, I'm in support of affordable housing. I just don't think it's a good fit for this village, for our community. And in fact, he was so adamant about it that he was threatening to remove his businesses. I believe he has a club/bar and a comedy lounge there in his hometown of Yellow Springs. So what can we learn from Dave Chappelle? Show up at the meetings. He's invested in his community because he owns property. And more so, he's voicing his opinion and he's leveraging that. Don't be upset with him because he's not in support of the affordable housing. That's not necessarily something that I'm picking on him about. It's more so of what it showed, what it illustrates that people don't realize still exists, right? And who's showing up at the meetings? Oftentimes the people that are deciding what they want in their own backyard. Do we want to train? In some pockets of LA, there's a freeway that just ends, doesn't even finish or continue. Why is that? Well, because the people showed up and said, we're not going to have a freeway running right through our community. But then in other areas, we see there's freeways wrapped all around. In fact, that an entire tract of land had been seized by the local government by use of eminent domain in order to build those freeways. What's the difference? The difference is that you have people showing up, being heard, making a change, and more so backing it by land and money. The land is there invested in the community, and they've got the power to leverage their resources. All right. So that's what I wanted to share. Listen, if you're a homeowner, I definitely think you should get the guide, the Homeowner's Guide to Success, provided by the CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. You all may probably hear me talk about CFPB a lot. I do, because they do a lot of advocacy for consumers. Also, if you're in the LA area, LA has the Department of Consumers and Business Affairs. Very, very awesome. They've got lots of teleconferences and webinars in terms of landlord-tenant laws. They've got webinars on taxes, resources for taxes. They have webinars on business for if you're a small business owner. So get together. I know someone had reached out to me and said, I'm a small business owner. What resources that I may not be aware of? And I said, get connected with your local city Department of Business and Consumer Affairs, because they have tons of resources, more so than Lisa can offer, right? So I'm just here connecting you with those resources. Do send an email before I forget, lisa@lasuperaagent.com for your free copy of Homeowner's Guide to Success. Why am I advocating that or supporting that? Is because it's so important for you to have your budget worksheet. Do a budget worksheet, especially if you are a homeowner, and just being aware of your expenses, right? Because now's the time to optimize on our expenses. Be mindful where the money's going out and how much is coming in, especially as we continue to shift in these next couple quarters and get into the next year. Because again, as I've shared with you, tenant protections in terms of not paying rent. If you are within a protected jurisdiction, that means that tenant is is protected from paying rent until February 7th, 2024. And what day is today? We just started. We're just in 2022. So that's a lot to carry and a lot of burden to carry. So be mindful, stay abreast of those ordinances, and make sure you are subscribed, you're connected, and you're tuning in to Ready, Set, Real Estate. I'll see you next week on another information-packed episode right here on all platforms. Take care. Bye.